Got on my leather jacket Thriller. The show ain't nothing Miller. Man, I'm a lady killer. If I want her, I'm a stealer. I promise I can make her fly away like caterpillars. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Leticia Remauro and I'm joined by my partner George Passariello, and we're from the Vaughn Agency, and today our guest is Angela Olsen, and we're going to talk about something that I think is really important: commercial real estate investing and what's going on with commercial real estate post-COVID. How you doing, George? Ready for the weekend?
Yeah, I had a good weekend. I'm excited for you to return. We're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow, Monday.
My return from down south to back up to the north. I'm very happy to do it, although I have to tell you that South Carolina does know how to handle COVID, and they handled it well. I know that you're hearing all kinds of reports that, it's raging here. It is not. When the testing is way up, the hospitals still have plenty of room. Nobody is, we're not having problems, at least here in Horry County, with hospital beds, and people are being really careful, and they're wearing masks. But I've been out to eat. I've been to the gym every day. I've had my nails done. So, and joining us today is Angela Olsen. Before we get going, though, Angela, I want to recognize our #1 fan. Hello, Lucille Chavone. Good to see you today, and I'm going to talk a minute about our guest because she's quite impressive. Her name is Angela Olsen, and she is the president and CEO of Situs Equity. Angela, prior to creating Situs Equity, was the chief investment officer and vice president of Lightstone Group. And she has been underwriting commercial deals and financing for many years, and we are very happy. She tells me she's in the business for 30 years, but I don't believe her because that would mean that she started when she was 5. But welcome today, Angela Olsen. How are you?
Fine. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
We're excited to have you because I think that there's such uncertainty, Angela, with what's going on financially in our country, and people look to the stock market always as an indicator, and our president certainly does, but they don't realize that the real estate is a real driver of what goes on in our economy. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and tell us how you got involved and what it is you do and what it is that Situs Equities does.
So I started, actually, it's funny because I started as a real estate paralegal many years ago, putting myself through St. John's here in Staten Island. And I ended up deciding I didn't want to be the lawyer, being up at 3 a.m, taking comments from the bankers and the clients and redoing documents. I wanted to be out having those martinis at 2 a.m. and being able to call someone, my lawyer, to change the documents. So I managed through, ended up going for finance over at NYU, where I was also an adjunct professor for many years. And I ended up working in the S&L days, the savings and loan industry, always, for some reason, I always ended up on the equity side of the business more than the debt side. And that's really my specialty. So that's where I started. From there, I ended up going into work for a company called Arbor, again, doing more the equity as opposed to the debt side or the high leverage debt portion of it. And then I went to Lightstone Group, where I ran acquisitions and finance there. And that company is now worth a couple of $1 billion. When I started with them, it was $750 million. And I've gone through all of these career changes, mostly because of the tragedies in the marketplace. Was it the S&L crisis? Was it 9/11? It was a 2008 issue, and now with COVID. So I feel like I was hoping to be retired before I saw the downside of real estate again and what's going to happen. So I think I'm pretty, and I talk to people constantly, and people call me because I'm going to say it's going to be the 4th time that I've seen the real estate market that's going to take a hit. And we're fooling ourselves if we don't believe that's the case.
And New York is so dependent on its real estate market, and but certainly today you work more than in New York City. You have properties throughout the country,
Right.
but
I actually I manage a 245 unit with 25,000 square feet of retail in Philadelphia. I've done construction loans last year out in California, land loans and stuff like that. I've also closed a shopping center down in Miami about 18 months ago. So yeah, I'm all over the country with this. And Manhattan, Manhattan's, my stopping ground where I get my bread and butter, if you may. But, my clients call me from all over. I have pretty much a steady client base that I've been working with for a good 20 years, 15 years.
so where are some of the biggest? Well, let me rephrase. So, is it true that the commercial real estate market is really a driver for any city? I mean, I know that all the cities are different, but is that where most of the cities get their taxes?
Sure.
Talk to us about that.
So, listen, and I spoke to you briefly about it. And one of the things that really scares me is, and we spoke about this, is, especially in commercial real estate, your real estate taxes, your insurance is always picked up by the tenant. It's never the landlord. It's considered additional rent, even in retail. So when you're looking at a retail tenant as a commercial tenant as opposed to a residential multifamily property, the real estate taxes are part of their expenses, especially in a mall. Your anchor tenants being your Macy's, your Sears, your Nordstrom, they have low base rent, but they're paying most of the real estate taxes.
Yeah.
To the
So,
property.
George, all of a sudden we're getting some feedback here. I don't know where that's coming from.
I don't hear.
You don't hear it? We're hearing it. We were hearing an echo. Okay, it's gone now. All right. So Angela, no, it's there. I hear it. Do you hear it, George?
No.
Okay.
I'm hearing it. No, it's gone now.
It's good.
Okay.
So the tenant bears the burden of those taxes, which is they call that what, a triple net lease, right?
Well, yeah, it could be. The lease structures are different from everywhere, from what they call base share, gross leases to triple net. Most of them are, modified gross. It's over base share, but the issue is not going to be on that as much as, like I spoke to you earlier about. One of the things concern me is a major tenant like WeWork.
Okay.
WeWork has about 8.9 last record that's published out there. It looks like they have 8.9 million square feet of commercial space in New York City. In 9 buildings, there are 50% of the tenancies, so probably about 60% of the income. And now you take a condition like COVID, where these guys were taking, one of their areas that they were charging $5,000 a month for, where they could stick 6 people in. A company could put 6 of their folks in there. Now they have occupancy where they could only put 3 in. So is it going to be cost effective to have, 3 people sitting in a space for $5,000 when we realize down the road here that, people can work remotely from home?
So do you think that we're going to see entities like WeWork
all these shared
or?
I think first of all, let's take it down one notch. Is that employer that's been taking out this WeWork space realizing that they could be just as effective with everyone working from home?
Right.
Do they really need to lease a WeWork space, for $5,000 a month?
Right.
Okay.
Or any space for that matter, right?
Right. So this whole idea of working remotely and the internet, and then on top of that, they don't have to pay, all the other expenses and up costs for every time they do something in there. So I think every office is going to figure that out, and it's going to be a problem. I think we're going to show a big vacancy in the commercial market. as far as office space. I think we're going to have another problem with retail. I mean, Brooks Brothers is filing. Neiman Marcus is filing. These people not only are in the retail business and hire and employ a lot of people, both front and back office, they're also own buildings in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, those are going to become vacant. They're going to come up for sale. You know, how many times is Amazon going to pay a premium to buy a building in New York City? There's only so many Amazons and and Googles to buy these buildings. So I believe we're going to end up with higher vacancy, therefore lower rents, and real estate. And then the effect on also this whole crisis with COVID, people are not paying their rents.
So I mean, so this, I mean, the ripple effect of this can really trickle down to everyone, not just, people who own businesses, not just to realtors, but if the prices and the values of buildings are going down, don't a lot of unions have their money invested in real estate deals? Don't a lot of insurance companies have money invested in real estate deals? I mean, if we're not going to the office to work anymore, then does that mean more traffic on the street? What does our downtown start to look like? What's those? Yeah, go ahead.
So, you touch upon another part of my career that I actually was dated before that, and that's the commercial mortgage-backed security, and where, you pool all these large loans together and make a securitization. And all that being said, those tranches and that pool of loans get sold off into what you're saying, into those pension funds and, the AAA bonds, the insurance companies buy that. And, when it comes to the market where the tenants are not paying, the banks are not getting you can't go to an owner of a building and say, pay my mortgage when, I know for a fact that I lost $100,000 worth of income on a multifamily property because everybody decided they didn't have to pay because the government, everybody's saying don't pay your rent. All of a sudden my rent roll of $500,000 is down to $350. How the hell am I supposed to pay my mortgage and manage my building?
Yeah, but apparently that doesn't matter to people. I don't understand what they're doing with real estate in the city. The city should be giving vouchers for people to pay their rent, not telling them not to pay their rent. At least that. I mean, it's insane to me. I don't know how people are going to survive.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Angela.
They're looking at the individual like you and me, but they're not looking at I don't understand how, I don't want to get into, the government side of this, but how they cannot realize.
Right. You were coming on our show and not getting onto the government side. Didn't anybody tell you who we are?
Listen, I want to keep that part of my role. But, the government side of it. First of all, they could have, now de Blasio's talking about like laying off people. Everybody wants to lay off people. Damn it. You take a company like General Motors. You know what they did? My son works for General Motors. He's in the IT division. Within the first 3 weeks of COVID, they projected that this was going to be a travesty. So they cut everybody's salary by 25%. And said, listen, at the end of the day, if we get it, because think about it, all those employees, like now they want to start cutting, George, you got me on, this is not where I wanted to go with this. But if the government was smart, everybody, all city workers, all state workers, everyone's staying home. So right there, you're saving 20% of expenses, go traveling into the city, getting lunch every day, making sure your clothes are dry clean. They should have did what General Motors did. They should have cut everybody a certain percentage and said, we'll make it up to you. But now we're talking about job cuts. So what does that mean? I mean,
and that's true. I mean, de Blasio knowing that, nobody's at City Hall right now, right? That's on a short staff. I mean, how many people in the city agencies I know are working from home? We could have gotten, the same situation could have happened with maybe the non-union, with the management confidential employees of the city. And we know that de Blasio had hired a boatload of administrators where he could have said, okay, I'm going to take a percentage of your salary back because you're not now traveling. But he doesn't think like that. He doesn't operate like that.
But General Motors came out with positive results in the first quarter. And,
Sure.
and I believe other major companies, because we don't know how to think big picture. We think of the, small picture, but they don't realize the big picture. Everybody worries about big business. But they're the ones who are employing the little guy on the street.
Yeah, well, look at what's going on right now. So we have people not paying their rent. We have, many families, and especially in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan and the Bronx, some in Staten Island too, who live in maybe a six over, multifamily house, residential building that maybe was left to them by a parent or whatever, and they managed this building, and now they're not collecting any rents, but the city wants their property tax, doesn't it? Come July, they want their property taxes paid. They're not giving you.
Leticia, take it one step further. You go into the avenues of Brooklyn, where you have the mom and pop retailers with the residential component upstairs. Those properties have been financed and always looked at that the retail tenant picks up the taxes.
Right.
The retailers, you go along Fifth Avenue, you go in Manhattan. I was walking Manhattan the other day. I went from like Lexington Avenue. I had a meeting by Citicorp Center, and I went to park over in the 71st Street. And I walked down Park Avenue up Lexington Avenue. The stores are shutting down. But if you look on Lexington Avenue also, where you have small, bodegas and you have apartments upstairs, that retail tenant picks up the burden of the taxes, and they're closed.
It's amazing to me the hypocrisy that some of these mayors are committing by saying we're allowed to have protests. Oh, here goes the echo again, George. We're allowed to have protests, but we're not allowed to open up businesses, or we have to reduce the businesses because of COVID. To me, they are setting up their city for future failure. And I said it at the top of the program. In South Carolina, they opened cautiously. People are wearing masks. If somebody is tested positive for COVID in a restaurant, the restaurant closes down. Everything's washed, everything's sanitized, and then it opens up again. Most everything is outdoors, but there is indoors. People are far apart. They have a tourist season, and this is it. And they're making the most of their tourist season. De Blasio and the Seattle mayor and the mayor of Minneapolis, they are so short-sighted in the fact that they have just given over their city to protesters, and they haven't once thought about the people that live there, the taxpayers, or the people that do business there. And
Leticia, even the hotels.
Yeah,
I know for a fact. I know one of the questions you want to tap on. We're going to dig into a little bit, but I'll accelerate it. Is hotels.
Yep.
There was so much construction money allocated to hotels. They were doing fabulous. Now you shut down the whole hotel industry in New York City. With all due respect to what's his name, De Niro yesterday, I don't know if you read the Post. He had to cut his wife's American Express bill from $100,000 a month to $50,000 because his restaurants and his hotels are not doing well. Well, I'm not. You can laugh about that, George, but you know how many people are losing their shirts in the hotel? How many people invested in hotels in New York City and all over? And to the point of hotels. Annapolis, I was down in Annapolis, Maryland. I stayed in a Westin, which is a high-end Marriott. They're not making your bed anymore. Don't think you're going to go to a hotel and have your bed made. They said to me, if I wanted my room cleaned, it was an additional $25.
Wow.
They said they're not cleaning rooms for 4 days. Now I said to my husband, we're going on another road trip. And I said to him, he goes, Angela, I don't want to stay in a hotel that I have to make my own freaking bed.
Yeah. Well, that's why the RV industry is becoming so big. People are now renting RVs, and they're going, they're driving because they don't want to be worried about, COVID restrictions on planes. They want to be contained, and they want to know that their area is cleaned by their own hand. And I can understand it. So, Angela, with all this going on, what do you predict going forward? Should people, All right, there are people that see the glass is half empty and half full, right? Should people be taking their money and say, look, I'm going to pick a city that I think is going to be the next place to thrive, and I'm going to buy real estate as cheap as I can, wait for the bottom to fall out, and invest and buy real estate? Should they buy in New York? Should they buy in Chicago? Should they look for those deals now? Or should people be saying, you know what, I'm not investing in commercial real estate?
Listen, Leticia, 30 years of this, right? And I told you I hit the bottom. And that's always a question. Real estate is a tangible. It will come back.
Okay.
It's bricks and mortar. You know, it's funny. I underwritten, and everybody goes to me, I've underwritten many high wealth clients, through my life. And one thing you always realize about real estate developers, they only invest in real estate. They don't want to even understand the stock market. They touch upon it. That's where they understand it. But if you talk to somebody who made their fortunes in the stock market, they won't touch real estate. So that's a mindset you're not going to change. Okay. But in the meantime, real estate is a tangible. It will come back. People still need places to go, and it'll reinvent itself. Will it be at the, when I was underwriting commercial residential rents at $40 a square foot, and they told me Long Island City, and this was going to cost $60 a square foot to rent. I was like, you people are out of your mind. You're going to bankrupt it. Those rents are now at $70. Okay, there is still the fact that people are making nice money working from home. They're going to want to have that apartment in the city and the wherewithal. We will strive and we'll come out of this. But like somebody asked me, and I have a couple of clients. One has a very liquid client of mine. He has about $30 million to invest in real estate. We've been looking for about 7 months already. We haven't found anything that really makes sense for us because the cap rates were really low, so it makes the prices really high. And I said to him, look, now after, I think since February, from COVID started, this is the first week I've been seeing deals come into the market from like the major developers, brokers like CBRE, Newmark & Co. And now I'm just, it's starting to trickle in. And, I said to my guys, I said, watch it, because my feeling is, and I tell this to everybody, you have to look at the banks, right? Because what's going to happen now, my friends that are in banking that I'm picking up the phone with, are you doing deal? I have a deal for you. And we're overwhelmed between PP money and also they're doing, the paperwork on this PPE loans and all the workouts of people not paying their mortgages, all right, like the hotel industry. What I'm saying to people right now is wait for the quarter to end, that the regulators are going to go in, evaluate the real estate portfolio on these banks, and tell the bankers, listen, you're overexposed. We're asking you to take higher reserves on this real estate portfolio so you're secure from a banking standpoint. And they're going to ask them to sell those loans.
Right.
And will somebody come in? There's companies. I get calls every day. People are putting together funds to buy defaulted real estate loans. And they'll buy the note. They don't even have to buy the real estate. So people are getting ready because the government's going to come in and they're going to tell the banks, listen, you got to get rid of some of this real estate.
So, George, one more time. We see. Does somebody have Facebook open in the background? Because we're hearing that echo.
I don't. I have everything closed.
Yeah. Okay. So our banks. So then banks aren't making loans right now, or they're picking and choosing, or some may, some may not.
Well, they're making. Listen, on the residential side, which I'm not an expert on, but because I know people that have been looking, I mean, they're making. If you don't have over a 700 credit score, you could just like go to sleep. Okay, which for some people that are first-time buyers, that could be a little high for them. On the that's on the residential. On the commercial side, you could get a commercial loan, but I mean, you have to be stellar perfect, and you can't have high leverage because interest rates are low, spreads are high. But who wants to be in at a remember, a bank is going to make money on two things. They make their money. They make on the fees going in to originate the loan and the spread of what their cost of capital is to what they pay to charge you. Right. So even though interest rates are low, that spread has to be high. And at one point, how low can you go?
Right.
You know, the banks still have to make money. They still have to carry. So
who's going to suffer? You know, there's people think of these building owners and these multi-million-dollar corporations, Solo and the like, but there's a lot of small landlords, little guys. How is that going to affect the little guy that has the 5-apartment building in Brooklyn that's been his career, his family's legacy? How do you think they're going to be affected?
Well, it's also you have hopefully, and this is what I always tell people when they're buying an asset or a client comes to me, goes, Ange, there's clients that close deals that I said to me, dude, I think you're over leveraged, you're overpaying, and you're over financing your deal. I mean, those guys are the first ones to go. If the small guys you're talking about, I believe probably are going to be a little bit more conservative. But some of those people, like you said, George, they're I know little old ladies that are living. That's their income.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to, they're either going to lose their property, try to sell their property. There's still going to be cash out there. There's still people with there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines with a lot of freaking cash that these people are going to have to sell. But then at that point, they're going to have to pay the capital gains because you can't do a 1031 an exchange to avoid that because there's not going to be much to buy that's better than what you just sold.
So does that mean are we going to see the death of the little landlord?
I think that's been coming around for a long time, George.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
I mean, look at the Lower East Side. The Kushner's bought all over there. If you go into Bushwick, there's one or two big guys that are players that are buying up all that stuff anyhow, and they're buying off the air rights and developing on that. I mean, I know those guys. I mean, that's been a trend. So,
So is there anything that the governments can do to stop the death of the little landlords? I mean, I know that in New York, we hear it all the time that there are so many regulations and so many demands on landlords, but yet they're not allowed to raise rents. And so they squeeze these landlords and put them into bad positions, which is why the bigger guys kind of buy them up. But is there anything, in your opinion, Angela, that cities can do to help landlords get through this point in time right now, so that commercial real estate, does it, so that we don't see rows and rows and blocks of shuttered up stores and just filth like we're seeing right now?
I think they, between, the real estate tax burden, even if there's everybody talks about these bid taxes. I mean, you get major thoroughfares like 57th Street. Not only they're paying real estate taxes, they're paying a bid tax, which is another 5 or 7% of their income stream. This is why, people, these areas created these bids, not realizing that's another burden onto the valuation of your property, because that expense is taken away from your income, your bottom line, to give you the valuation you need. So I think if they got to pull back on some of that bid stuff that, and Giuliani put those bids in, and they were a great idea at the time because they cleaned up 42nd Street and stuff. But, it's not take some of that burden off of these areas now. Not even real estate, take the other ancillary taxes that they're adding on. Also occupancy taxes on some, like Philadelphia has a big occupancy tax on retailers. They should, give a forbearance on that and let them ride for a year without it.
Yeah,
I have that in New York too for the hotels.
Yeah, I mean, for the hotels too, but down there it's huge too. There's a lot of additional taxes that above and beyond real estate taxes that people don't even realize. But in the meantime, again, real estate taxes go back to what? It goes back for the mayor to create a budget to run our city. And there you go again, Leticia. Go hit him on that. Tell him to cut his damn budget, and he doesn't have to charge the taxes, and have everybody take a furlough. So, we could keep those buildings in business and those landlords making some money. Listen, no landlord. And remember, a lot of these loans also, these owners of these buildings, these are non-recourse loans, right? So what does that mean? They could go back and hand the keys back to the bank and say, good, I'm done. You deal with it.
Oh, so they can. They could
And they
just
will.
walk away.
They could walk away, hand it to the lenders, and then the lenders are going to put it onto the market for sale. They're going to, the only thing those guys are going to do is keep the real estate taxes current, because that's the only thing that primes a mortgage, right?
Right.
But then it's craziness. Then
It's crazy.
now with
Crazy to
COVID.
me. Oh, sorry.
Go
I
ahead,
didn't
George.
interrupt you.
Go
You know
ahead.
why it's crazy to me is that the goal of I'm not going to say Democrat, because Democrats are not in this category. The goal of the ultra liberal agenda is to help the people, right? But what they're actually doing, without knowing it, is helping large corporations gobble up real estate. That's the way, from my uneducated, I'm not into real estate, I'm horrible at it. That's the way it seems to me. They're setting up big corporations to swoop in and buy it all up at a discount and own it in big blocks, screwing the little guy. That's the way it feels to me. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I know, you look at it on a cynical basis, but it is what it is. I mean, they're going to be selling blocks of notes that are not performing, maybe at par, maybe a little bit of a discount. Because what happens is, George, those loans on the books, even for the smaller banks that do small construction loans, they're going to be told they can originate no more business until they get rid and sell that real estate off, because it's hitting their tier one capital. It's craziness. And you got to, even those little banks that we used to getting a nice little construction loan for one of our smaller developers.
Yeah, like our local Staten Island banks, I'm sure that's most of their business, right?
Yeah, I mean, the little guys, even to do a small loan.
Sorry, I had to put on my earphones because my dogs are barking in the background.
At the end of the day, real estate is a solid investment, and we're going to have turmoil. The retail industry is going to be in a turmoil, as we're seeing. It didn't help, with all the looting in New York City. And I don't know if you've been there, Leticia. Like I said, I took a nice stroll the other day, and the poor across the street from Bloomingdale's, there's the Victoria's Secrets. All the windows were punched out. Everything's up in boards.
Today, a lot of the businesses, got together to sue the mayor for and the governor for the damage that occurred down there. So, I mean, what my concern here is that, people think, it doesn't matter, as George was saying before, right? There's a group of anti-capitalists who say our goal is to help the little guy, and they think the way to help the little guy is to, we're gonna tax the rich, we're gonna tax the business owner, we're gonna tax the property owner, and at the end of the day, what winds up happening is everything trickles down to them, and they don't then have the services they need, and that's what we're seeing now. And I think it's really important for people like you, Angela, who have hands-on experience in the industry and could forecast what's going to happen, because you've seen it, as you said. You have, four different, incidences of disasters that you had to get through to be able to advise these governments about what to do, not to destroy their own cities, because we saw it upstate New York. Look at Niagara Falls on the New York side. How come the Niagara Falls on the New York side does not match the Niagara Falls on the Canadian side? What was different between those two things? What was different was the governments and their tax structures and what they did to the citizens. And on the New York side, there was nothing there. There was no place for the citizens to work. And Cuomo has done nothing to attract any business to that area. And on the Canadian side, they allowed tourism to flourish, and they made it easy for people to service the tourist industry. For us to turn a blind eye in New York City to the tourist industry, for us to allow Broadway to close down until January, that means no summer, no fall, no Christmas. We're done. Who the hell's coming to New York? We've turned all the hotels into homeless shelters. We have allowed an encampment, at City Hall Park. And we've allowed damage on Fifth Avenue, and we have absolutely no our mayor has absolutely no desire to help fix it.
Nor does he care. Listen, and you know this from experience. I kind of help those homeless people on the streets.
Yeah,
I've introduced you to some
sure.
of them. I mean, I feel bad for my homeless people out on Wall Street that I used to contribute to everybody else. There's no one to give to these guys.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
the poor homeless panhandler is not making money in COVID world. I mean, you just laugh about it, but it doesn't he realize these people, even though I'm not only talking about the big business, the WeWorker, but the homeless guy that used to sit outside the building, who used to wait for someone to give him his coffee, the woman who was a secretary that would buy these people lunch. This is how they survived. I don't know where I went in. I was looking for my homeless people that I take care of, and I couldn't find them. I don't know where they went. I was very
They went to
upset.
City Hall.
Oh,
There,
no.
there was
He got him
a
appointments.
story in the Times today. They're
Did
in
he
City.
send them to Jersey? Didn't he send them to New Jersey?
He sent some, but those that now they're calling it Abolition Park, City Hall Park, and
Like we had Zuccotti Park, right? They had to
yeah.
mess with that place over there.
Well, now the protesters are gone, and now the homeless have moved in. And I look at New York City, and I look at Chicago, and I look at Minneapolis, and I wonder to myself, and Seattle, are these cities ever going to come back? And I know, and I'm not questioning your wisdom, Angela. I know it's cyclical. And Lucille Chavone says, I've had a 30-year career working in stock market. Bottom line is people do invest in the market, but everyone needs a place to live. So real estate is always a good investment. I agree that it's a good investment, but what is it going to look like in the future, and what are these cities going to look like, and what's commercial real estate going to look like? What's the retail industry going to look like? We were already on our way to all online, before COVID, and now it's done nothing but boom. Who's going to risk themselves to go to a concert or to go to the theater? Or what do you think is ever going to happen again?
I think once a vaccine comes out, listen, like I said, yeah, I think if they're if you read enough, and I have people in my life that are scientists and stuff that are not politicians, and they're working really hard. I think it's like somebody said to me the other day, I don't play the stock market. If you were playing the stock market, what would you buy? I said I would buy airline, because once the vaccine comes into play, they'll still, the world will have changed, because we've learned to work a different world. We learned to shop online more. We've learned to work from home. So that's on the commercial. But at the end of the day, people want to be out. People want to go for that liquid lunch every so often and just hang out on Stone Street in Manhattan, and, go to Adrian's and, hang out there, or go down to, Grand Central Station and hang out. It's just the aura of being a New Yorker. I mean, I miss that. I'm going through withdrawal, not being able to go sit and hang out in Bryant Park, or, on Stone Street on a Friday afternoon and just have a couple of beers with friends. I mean, that's part of working. It's your therapy, especially in a high stress environment. So I think people are going to want to go back to an office building just for the camaraderie and, the lunches and the dinners and, the socialization. Remember, we're animals first. We need to hang out with other people. That we need people around us. That's what makes us who we are. It's our tapestry.
Did you see what Nordstrom's did to their new store in the city before COVID hit? They launched that new store, and on every floor is a bar. So I think that's kind of the future of retail. It's going to be a co-experiential retail that you're going to see.
Well, George,
adapt.
they did. Yeah, they're trying to do that. That's all great. But I mean, look at the other sector that we're not talking about, touching upon, the movie theaters.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, look at all the beautiful theaters. Alamo Drafthouse out of Texas, out of Austin. I went there when my son lives in Austin, and I went down there, and they built it over here in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn. It was a great experience. Like you said, you go into that mall over there where that is, and you have the Century, you have that. It's an experience. You're going for the experience. And I
So
agree
that's
with
going to
you.
be the focus now of retail. I mean, it was already moving to experiential retail. I think restaurants will always make it because that's what we do. It's our opportunity to get out and eat good food, and I think that's what we do. But there's a lot that's changing, and I mean, I think what you talked about with WeWorks, that was important for people to know and see that. So you think that WeWorks is kind of out because people will be able to have get their own office for about the same price in the near future?
I think there's two things are going to happen. They're going to go back to the WeWork people, try to renegotiate their leases and say, listen, I need double the size of the space that you would for 6 people, so it's 10,000. I need you to. They're going to be smart enough to work out the leases with the current people, and they're going to go back and WeWork is going to go back to their landlords and say, listen, because of this, either you want empty space or you're going to cut my rents down and renegotiate my lease. And then they're going to go back and say to their lender, listen, I can't pay you the rent because, 50% of my building income is coming from WeWork. And, that's where you got to rework out my loan.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a trick. It's going to be a trick. And then they're going to go back. And then, hold on. Then they're going to go and file for a tax cert, and they're going to appeal their taxes because the income in the building isn't what it used to be. And it'll be a cyclical thing until they stabilize out.
And we have a few people commenting, Leticia, I wanted to mention, not on the stream that you could see.
Okay.
Bill LeGregor said hello. Anna Shipakova.
Sorry, Anna.
And John Beccaria has a question or a comment. He said, I'd like to comment that all tourists shop in the stores whenever I'm in Macy's on 34th Street. The out-of-country foreigners come in with empty suitcases to shop. In one way, that's why we got COVID-19, because they came in from other countries. And please tell Leticia and Angela hello.
Hello.
But it's a good point, John. I mean, tourist shopping that's kind of why Empire was put up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you look at Jersey Gardens, right? Over in Elizabeth. And they come in the morning off the planes. They go buy their pieces of luggage. They go into Nautica, fill up the little the shopping carts. They pack up all their stuff, and they're on the 3 o'clock flight back out to wherever they came from to go sell the stuff. George, listen, I was big in the outlet business. I don't know if you realize that. One of my largest deals was a leverage buyout of 22 outlet centers throughout the country. And I know the outlet business. And when Glimcher built that originally, it was like, what are they, crazy or something? But being right next to Newark,
yeah,
getting feedback again.
I don't know if it's me. I got the lawnmower guys outside. How we doing? Okay or no?
It was that Facebook. If you stop that Facebook thing again, maybe.
I have no Facebook.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
just gonna. You're gonna have to live with the lawnmower guys. Sorry.
That's fine. I don't hear. We
Okay.
can't hear. But that's that's where we are. I mean, I think we have to be patient. The one thing talk about Trump. He was very smart. With the stock market and everything going up, if it was another president, they would have increased interest rates. This guy has managed to flex a little muscle there with the feds and keep interest rates low. That's what's going to help us, and people better realize that.
And that's the scary thing, because Joe, I can't. The anti-Trumpers are jumping on the bandwagon wherever they can to try and tear the president down. But when you take a look at a president who's managed to keep the stock market up and the interest rates down,
It's amazing.
During the worst crisis that nobody knew how to handle, and to try and make that a bad thing is insanity to me, because I do believe that some of these anti-capitalists, Marxists, socialists, whatever you want to call them, who are out there truly believe, just print more money. We need more money, print more. What's the difference? Just print more. And they don't recognize that a good government policy is to have people invest their money into the economy so that it revolves and the value of your dollar is, stays strong. Because as you just said, Angela, the reason that people can come here, shop, and take all the stuff somewhere else is because the American dollar is cheaper than their dollar from their country. And we don't want to be in that position again. We were in that position with China and with the euro, and we need to get our American dollar strong. And I think it's only Trump that can do it. But I think the biggest problem is that we're not teaching our kids in school about economics. They don't,
Sure.
I mean,
Leticia, the normal person I speak to, it's funny, you and I talk about this, the younger generation of ours, they don't understand how money works. They don't understand, the process of, once the government puts out money and the chain of where that money goes and how to value it.
And that goes back to the fact that the parents of these kids are willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on an education that does not prepare them for life. And as employers, George and I know, I mean, we've had some fantastic young people come through our door who are ready for work at age 17 and 18 and 19, 20 years old. And those people we've held on to. But we have some 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds and older, graduated with a master's degree out of college who have absolutely no concept of how the economy works, how life works, or how an office works for that fact. They think that they're being great. They come to the office with excuses and whining and whatever else. And you just know that they're never going to survive in the world that we know or we knew was business. But now take that one kid and multiply it by millions. And what do you get? You get what we see out in the streets. What I call the privileged protester who's out there not knowing the history, knocking down statues and not having the history behind it. They don't even know what the hell they're protesting.
And one of the things you learn early on in school, which I don't even know if it's taught, history repeats itself. Like, you got to watch out. This is why, and it's the history that's repeating itself that, brings in the values of today. I just don't understand where it's going. But as far as, getting back on the real estate side, I think there will be opportunities. I think anyone who has cash, hold on to it, because I think there'll be value there again. I think, like I said, it's going to be a trickle down. It's going to take 6 months to about a year for, the bad stuff to weed out. And then it'll take about 2 years to stabilize, 3 years to stabilize probably to get that.
So let me ask you this before I let you go, because we have about 12 minutes left. So you've done deals all over in lots of cities. Can you tell me, which city you think is the best for encouraging investment and which is the worst?
It's funny because one of the things I'm concerned about with the universities and stuff doing this home stuff, I'll tell you where I'm worried. Places like Blacksburg, Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana University is, where Virginia Tech is, these large universities that create these cities. Where's student housing going to go? What's going to happen to all of that inventory? University of Maryland. Like the State University has a lot of student housing. Those schools have anywhere between 30 and 50,000 kids. The Red State University is on the average of 35,000 kids. That place was housing 35,000 kids.
Wow.
Where is all that beautiful housing down? I don't know if you go to these campuses and these cities. That to me, I don't know where that real estate's going to go. That concerns me. Where is the future of education and these universities? I mean, I'm going to pay, what is it, $70,000 to go to Harvard to live at home?
Yeah, part of the college experience is the people, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. I hope to God they don't take that away.
Well, they're starting to. Nobody wants to. I think Notre Dame is the only school that really has a plan out there right now. So, all right. So, South Bend, Indiana will survive on the student housing side. There's, again, one of the places like I said, I'm looking for a couple of clients of mine that liquid. I actually like Delaware. Because there's a lot of businesses down there, and they'll always be because of this tax structure.
Okay.
Again, Texas, Austin, because of the tax structure of the state and no income tax, and all of the tech companies, they're still going to want their space and their people, even though there's remote access. I think that's a great place. Any place that has tech future. As much as San Francisco is going to take a hit, it won't. Silicon Valley's, the tech industry will still, and people are moving into those industries. And mostly in Florida
too, right? Manufacturing is going to come back a little bit, I would think.
Listen, Detroit. People, I bought a portfolio for Lightstone Group years ago in Detroit where it was deteriorating. Today it's the most profitable portfolio cash-wise he's has because it came back. Detroit didn't, it's coming back. They bought it at a low basis. You don't have to charge a lot of rent and still make a good living up there. And the taxes are good because,
But let's talk about this now, all right? So the president is talking about bringing manufacturing back to America, right? And actually starting to manufacture drugs and things like that. But where's the workforce going to come from? Yeah, I mean, really, do we think that our kids are going to get out of high school and say, I want to work on an assembly line. I want to work, for manufacturing pills or something like that. The colleges, we're so college focused. Do you think that if the demand is out there for people to fill the jobs, that our kids will find it okay to be factory workers?
I think there's going to be a group. Listen, first of all, we are a melting pot. So most of those always go to the immigrant to start their livelihood in this country. That was always the place. Like my parents, my father, where he started, most of the people came here. They start in those lines. I think that's those fields and those cities will end up getting populated mostly by immigrants and then progress from there.
Okay.
Because and people move people. Listen, when Austin was developing into the tech, this is, not Austin where, proper North Austin, they recruited kids into these jobs and they gave them relocation packages to move and make communities.
So maybe some of this online learning might turn some kids off to the quote unquote college experience and maybe wake some parents up, and we might see more children willing to work with their hands or go to vocational colleges, vocational schools. I could see that cropping up. I mean, certainly. But you have to when you're in a vocational school, you work with your hands. You have to actually attend class to learn. So it's going to be interesting how the world evolves.
I would love to see a marketing effort done for vocation because that's the failure, right? Somewhere along the lines, we've celebrated Wall Street workers and said, oh, you got a factory job? That's nice. No, man. I mean, I know plumbers that make double, triple what I make, So this is an industry, that makes money, plenty of it too, and will always be needed. So I hope there's a marketing effort done to show the light to people that these are jobs to be really proud of. Listen,
I have yet to meet a plumber or electrician that's really poor.
Yeah, me either. Me too. Hey.
I mean, they walk into the house. Listen, even a licensed rigger. I always say to people, a guy who puts up, does a rigger that puts in those big buildings. Those guys are making a ton of money a year, and there's not too many of them. It's such a closed industry. To get a rigger's license or something in the construction field. I always listen. The construction field is the only issue I always see with construction. Those people are always zealous with their money because they spend a lot. You saw that, Leticia. We were talking about this in certain zip codes of Staten Island, where that's been prevalent, and there's now a problem because construction. The banks are going to be very wary. Listen, I've lived through the last crisis where everybody stopped giving out on their construction loans because they didn't know where the market was going, and you had all these stagnant buildings because the banks weren't letting people draw down on their loans.
I'm terrified of that. I'm terrified of that. Not just in New York, but across the country. This is it's interesting because the president said that part of the way he was going to get people back to work was going to be through construction, and that would make sense, right? Doing road repair, doing bridge work, that would make sense to create jobs and to get the economy rolling. But for our building, our construction industry that works primarily on buildings and tall buildings and towers, this is a very focused industry, and I worry that's the two are not going to mesh together, and we're going to wind up with plenty of roads and plenty of bridges and an economy that's going the right way. But where are those roads and bridges going? Are they going to any buildings, and are the buildings that are already in the ground going to come out the other side? It's a fear, and I think that we need to start talking about that, because I think we're all encapsulated, right? We don't recognize as Americans that everything that is going on in our lives affects the person next to us. And if I'm not spending money in the restaurant, that means that the restaurant's not making money, the waitress is not making money. Yeah, it's a domino effect. So we all have to be worried about everything, and business and economy is very important.
Leticia, I heard yesterday part of the cutting from New York City. I heard this through my industry folks, not from any viable, government official, but they're cutting back on HUD financing for construction.
And that we can't do.
That's a killer.
If we are desperate for affordable housing in New York City. Every big city is desperate for affordable housing, but we had 60,000 homeless people prior to COVID. I'll venture a guess, and I'll take bets on it, that we're going to wind up with over 100,000 homeless people after the COVID crisis, when we come out the other side of this, and we're going to have a boatload of young people who came here to protest who are going to just wind up staying here. How do we house these people if we don't have the financing through HUD? The government has to be behind it. The government, in my opinion, the president should not only be building roads, but he should be building. He should be giving money.
And they shouldn't be cutting that. But that's like the last thing. You're creating jobs, and this is what you're cutting. Again, no sense. Cut your workforce by 20% income. You furlough your workers and leave the construction workers working. Create jobs.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem, right? I mean, when you have federal government aid, the state and the city has to be complicit with them to get the money, right? The money's out there, but the government can't just walk in and go, okay, I'm going to build this HUD building for you. You have to get the governor and the mayor to buy in, and our governor and mayor are focused on stuff, but they're not focused on this stuff. And
I just can't, it just behooves me how non-business sense these people have. Listen, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I never thought, but when I sit down and listen to people, I'm not smart. I mean, as much as you could say I'm smart, but I am business savvy. I am street savvy.
That's smart.
That's what smart is.
Right, but you get a guy, and they haven't been in the trenches. And I always say to people, the person. You like myself, and I've said this to you on numerous occasions, I don't get a paycheck. You don't get a paycheck. We eat what we kill. We know how to survive. That's what makes us business savvy and smart and understand how finance works, because no one was giving us a paycheck when we were home sitting with COVID for 12 weeks. Listen, I didn't get a paycheck. I couldn't collect unemployment. I wouldn't. I was out there. I was hustling.
I like that you said I wouldn't. I feel the same way. I wouldn't either, unless I absolutely had to.
I'd like to see De Blasio or Cuomo give up their paycheck and hustle and try to figure out how to pay their bills.
Right, they should have done that in the first place. But that's the problem, Angela, right? Right now we have a president that made $1 billion or billions or whatever before he became president. And people are attacking him that they want to see his tax returns. Yet the politicians that knew nothing about making any money until they became elected to office and now are walking out of Washington making millions. They don't care about that. So how ridiculous is that? You're going to be obsessed with a man who is a small business owner, a big business owner, made his money, is not taking a paycheck. You're going to be obsessed with his income taxes, but you don't care that Joe Biden was making $400,000 a year when he was vice president and through Senate. But now his last tax return was $4 million. Where did he get that?
That's suspect. So
you increase, and that it drives me nuts. But Angela,
this poor president, they're attacking his hotels in the city. That he was not. It's my understanding the poor guy couldn't even get any PPP money or whatever it is called.
Yeah, right. They actually wrote it in there.
If you could have this money, except you, Donald Trump.
Nobody who was running for office was allowed to have PPP money, right? If they wrote it in, if you was running for federal office, you couldn't have PPP money.
Even if you were like a third cousin, you made the news. It was obscene.
Really?
Like they don't have a right to it because you employ so many people.
That's right.
You don't have the right to this PPP. It doesn't. None of it makes sense to me, and I'll never quite get it.
None of it does, and we get the government we deserve. And if people would prefer to see, if people have more faith that Joe Biden is going to do well with the economy, God bless them. I say anybody that's had 43 years to do something and still hasn't gotten it done. I don't think that's
I'm nervous over the fact that if and like again, it's not Democrat. Someone with a mindset that starts hitting us with an inflation. I mean, and this is like, and when people go after Trump, they don't understand what he did from an economic, real estate, and financial. We have been very fortunate that we haven't hit inflation.
Yeah.
As a country. Yeah. If we had to go through COVID and was going through the inflation factor, which we should have, in all fairness, we should have.
I'm shocked.
I'm shocked we're not. The next president's going to come is not going to be as savvy and not as smart as this guy to prevent. Inflation hits. It's going to be, you're going to get double-digit interest rates again. And like I said, so what is, it's going to devalue it'll devalue the whole lifestyle we live in. People forget. When I bought my first, I always teach this when I teach my finance class, is, when I bought my first home and I had $160,000 mortgage, I was paying 11% interest rate.
That's right.
Now
I was paying 8 on mine. Yeah,
16 I was paying.
Right.
It's
today you could buy a home for $400,000, for $200,000 more. I'm still paying the same mortgage payment. Sure. Cost of money and cost of capital has a lot to do where the wealth in this country comes, and people better realize that real quick before they put somebody like a Biden in there. We're going to lose all our wealth, from our real estate to our stock market and everything else. People better I wish people were just a little bit smart. I just don't understand where these people went to school or who educated them.
Well, that. They don't think wealth is important, and that's when you have to say to yourself, if somebody is telling your kids that wealth isn't important, then they're trying to tear apart your country, because every country knows that wealth is important. Wealth and power is important in order for you to take care of the people in your country. And anybody that believes otherwise, and with all respect to Bernie Sanders, we've seen Venezuela, we've seen other socialist nations, we see Cuba, in those countries where supposedly, they're more caring for their people than they are for their government. Why is it that all the people are poor? Why are all the people escaping and trying to come to America if we were so goddamn bad? So I'm going to add, Angela, I'm going to ask you to I'm going to ask you to give us your parting thoughts. We're about 4 minutes over, so tell us what you want people to know as you're walking out the door here.
I just want people to be smart about it. Again, I just want to hit back on the real estate side of it. If you do have cash and hold on to it, give yourself 6 months to invest. Even for home buyers, just be a little bit cautious on buying right now. I believe there will be foreclosures because people will not have jobs. Like, if they're starting to cut construction and they're starting, to lay off city and state workers, which is a shame because they should have just furloughed them from the beginning so they wouldn't end up here. There will be foreclosures, and on the commercial side too, cash is going to be king in 6 months to a year. And just don't be overzealous, and be smart about it. And hopefully, the only thing is, if you got to think of how you vote for your interest rates and, cash flow within the economy. As far as retail is concerned, it'll come back, and the retailers has got to figure it out. And that's about it. I mean, just, I still believe that down the road in 5 years, as everything else was cyclical, we'll have to ride this tidal wave and survive. And some people will drown, unfortunately.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for being here.
Thank
George,
you for having me.
You're welcome. Our guest for Monday is a big surprise, George, because, well, I'll talk to you offline about that. But everybody, thanks for tuning in again.
Don't do that to me.
2:00 on Monday. I hope to see you again. And remember, you can watch this and share it with friends, even though it's not live. So see you on Monday, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Angela. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.